Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Valentin, and in this video, we're gonna start on a brand new series on how to build a successful career. Now, this is gonna be in tandem to my existing video playlist, which is on how to build an ideal investment portfolio. And I'm gonna go back and forth between the two to give you guys useful tips. So to start off with, we're gonna work on how to build an ideal resume. And as you know, a resume is a stepping stone to any sort of potential career, successful career, and knowing how to build a resume will land you that first job. So I'm gonna go over 5 tips on how to improve your resume building. And at the end, we're gonna finish with a tutorial, a quick 2-minute tutorial on how you can customize the resume in literally 2-3 minutes using some of the available online tools. All right, let's get started. Okay, so starting with tip number 1, which is customization. Now, the most important tip that I have to give to everyone, even though it's fairly common sense, I see it over and over again where people don't take this into account, and that's to tailor your resume to the job genre you're applying to. So what that means is if you're applying for a scientific position, for example, you want to make sure that you do your best to your abilities to kind of customize that resume so that you have an orientation towards the science field with respect to your experience, with respect to your skills, your interests. Everything that's there needs to have a scientific spin. If it doesn't, it's likely going to fail. So that's number 1. Number 2, if you don't have any experience in the field of study that you're trying to apply to, then try to build a knowledge base and list all your accomplishments under the skills sections of your resume. So what that means is, I see more often than not opportunities being missed because people say, well, I don't have really this particular job requirement. I don't have any experience. Well, what you can actually do is you can take some online courses, for example, or you can watch some tutorials to build up a knowledge base, and then you can use that as a leverage under the skills section. So some employers can identify that potential, and you might still have a shot at a job interview if you have that present. And number 3 would be, if you list unrelated experience that is not remotely useful for the job, sometimes it can do you more harm than good. So what that means is, I've seen resumes where people would write they have experience in transportation or working at McDonald's or printing material, and they're applying for a high-end managerial position. That type of experience, it's not relevant to the job at hand, and the individual who's reading this resume might score you a few negative points just because of how poorly your resume is formatted. So keep that in mind. If an employer sees a resume that's fairly generic, they could easily discount you. If they see a resume that's tailored and customized to the job that you're applying to, your chances are much greater. All right, moving on to tip number 2. All right, so tip number 2 is detail. And so the most important tip is your resume should always be as succinct as possible when giving a description of your experience or your interest or your knowledge. Always try to answer the following questions when you describe your work experience: when, where, what, and how. So on this slide, I've put together 2 examples of how I would write my experience, and kind of we're going to go through each one and explain to you what exactly was my thought process when writing these out. Now, the experience was as a business analyst for company X between 2012 and 2015. Now, just in this one line, I'm explaining when my experience occurred, which was 2012 and 2015, and where for company X. So the first bullet point says, design a customizable user interface platform in MS Access in order to better facilitate transactions related to the import of medical devices. And what am I saying with this statement? Well, what did I do? That was designing a customizable user interface. How did I do it? I used MS Access. And what was the purpose? It was in order to facilitate transactions related to the import of medical devices. And so you can see this statement is very succinct. It's to the point. It has a lot of essence. I'm communicating a lot of information without having to do run-on sentence or bogging the reader into a lot of detail. The second bullet point, I wrote, networked with industry stakeholders to run effective ad campaigns and increase the company's visibility to local hospitals. So what did I do? Well, I networked with industry stakeholders. What was the purpose? It was to run effective campaigns and increase visibility to local hospitals. So hopefully with these two examples, you kind of get an idea of how you should structure your phrases and ideas without going into too much detail, too many unnecessary points. Okay, let's move on to the next tip. All right, so tip number 3 is ideal format. Now, from my experience, there are few varieties as to what the perfect format is, and everyone has their own kind of opinions. However, what's worked for me is the following. So I had, starting from the top going down, education, work experience, personal profile or skills, hobbies, and references. Now, if you're a recent graduate, I would say education should be at the top. However, if you've graduated many, many years ago, you can start off with work experience right away. So just going to go through each one of these and briefly break it down. For education, you should keep these brief. So just mention the name of the university and the degree that you've accomplished, as well as any sort of programs or interesting courses or accomplishments that you've made during that program. But again, keep this very, very short. For work experience, always list the most recent experience first in the format that I've discussed on my previous slide. And lastly, for personal profile and skills, now this section can be customized to your liking. I usually like it to break it down in the following categories. First one would be specific skill 1, specific skill 2. What that means is if I'm applying for a scientific position, the first skill that I would list would be laboratory experience, right? The second skill would be analysis. So these two would be tailored to the position you're applying to. And it's very important to have them there because it really catches the attention of the employer because they see that you have skills tailored to the position that you're applying to. And the last two, which are more generic, and you can keep these for any position you apply to, are communication and computer skills. Okay, well, hopefully that's helpful, and we can move on to tip number 4. Okay, guys, so for tip number 4, I wanted to touch briefly upon the subject of work experience. Now, the first point I have listed here is never be discouraged from applying. I've seen a lot of people that tell me, Valentin, it's practically impossible. I don't have any shot. There's no way I can get a position like this. I'm missing a lot of the criteria that are essential to the position. So my advice to you is never be discouraged by these selection criteria because positions, you need to take any opportunity you have because positions are very rare. Sometimes it might be 2-3 years before you could apply to another one that's in your domain or your interest. So what can you do in a situation where the criteria, the essential criteria and the asset criteria don't match your resume or your skill set? Well, what I strongly recommend is to take advantage of the internet. The internet is an endless encyclopedia of resources that is just at your disposal. As I previously mentioned in this presentation, there are many sources where you can take free courses online. You can watch free YouTube tutorials. You can read reviews and improve your skill set in areas that you don't have any. So once you've gained this information, of course, you can't list it as work experience because you haven't worked in it. However, you can list it under your skills section so employers can see that you have a lot of potential to do what's been requested, even though you haven't worked in that area. So this doesn't necessarily guarantee you an interview, but it definitely puts you at a step forward, a step ahead than pretty much just not applying or getting almost rejected from the application. So keep that in mind. Let's move on to our last tip of the day. All right, guys, so for our last tip of the day is never underestimate the tasks you performed. Now, I keep hearing people telling me, well, I'm not sure how I can possibly phrase something very basic into something more interesting. So if all I did was print documents, filed cabinets, and fax papers, there's no way to make that sound more interesting. Well, I would say that you're wrong. So Here, I'm going to kind of go through 3 potential examples and show you how you can transform a basic statement to something that has a lot more meaning to it. So for under before category, we have labeled and faxed documents to clients, filed cabinets in the records room, and answered phone calls as part of my call center duty. So these statements are all, you know, they're extremely basic. There's nothing, there's no essence, there's no meaning to it. An employer can easily skip over this. However, if we put some effort into it, we can transform these into statements that catch your attention. So let's see what we have after. Conducted a number of administrative services to ensure proper labeling for patent documents and adequate filing in chronological order. Now, what I've done here is I pretty much connected the labeling to some activity that's of a lot of interest, which is the patent documents. So tying the two together automatically kind of says that you are in charge of labeling high priority documents or documents with high business value. And the filing that you've done has there's a systematic approach to it. You're filing them by chronological order. It's not just that you're filing, there's considerations on how you do this process. And the second point was coordinated incoming and outgoing intra-departmental correspondence related to proper handling of business value documents. Now, so instead of saying you answered phone calls as part of your duties, you can give examples on kind of what your phone calls were about, and you can rephrase that. So coordinated incoming and outgoing intra-department correspondence, pretty much saying any sort of discussions coming in from your department with other departments or within your own department, you were the middle person behind that. And you were in charge of handling kind of the flow, the inflow and the outflow of documents of business value. So see how I transform these simple statements into ones that have a lot more essence, which are far more interesting. All right, guys, so to conclude our video for today, we're gonna do a live tutorial on how you can customize a resume from scratch, following all the above tips that I've given you. So here what I've done is I'm using a free available online resource called myperfectresume.com, and I'll just take you through the steps quickly to see how easy it is to put this together. So you can just go to myperfectresume.com, and then this homepage will appear. You can start off by clicking View Templates, and my internet's a bit slow. On this page, just click Create My Resume, and you'll be prompted with how long have you been working. You can say 5 to 10 years or whatever's relevant to you. And then they have a variety of templates you can choose from, recommended, traditional, or modern. I picked this one. I like this format, so we'll just select this. We'll say create a new resume, or you can upload the current existing resume. So let's start one from scratch, applying the template. So here's a bit of contact information. I'm just gonna put, I don't know, John Smith as an example here. And just quickly go through that. You don't need to populate this, so we'll just go next. Actually, it's asking for an email at gmail.com. Let's go on to work history. So it says here that employers can scan your resume for 6 seconds to decide if you're a match. Will suggest bullet points that make a great impression. So they're actually going to suggest experience bullet points based on what your job title is. So they want to know what your job is. So let's say it was a computer programmer. Just again, using that as an example. Employer, let's say it was IBM. And then Toronto, Ontario, sure. Start date, I don't know, let's say you started in 2012, in February, and then until current. So you can put this and click next. So here we can see the website is giving you suggested template points on how you should describe this experience. So collaborate with developers and performance engineers to enhance supportability and identify performance bottlenecks. This is very general. You could use that, but you would have to enhance it with some actual examples. Delivered and maintained scalable system architecture to support high availability internet side with various internal applications. So there's a bunch of examples here. Here, there's one that's a bit more specific: moderate and updated backend data by intercommunication between software and software. So this is when you're actually plugging in a specific software that you use. So let's just gonna select a few of them. Of course, you need to actually go through and see which one of these apply, and then tailor them a bit to kind of your expertise. But the wording used in these examples is very succinct, just like I was describing, and it touches upon all the major questions. So click next. So you can add another position for work experience. I'll just leave one for now. Move on to education. Next. So you can just say, yeah, University of Toronto, or whatever school you've attended, a degree. You had a, I don't know, Bachelor of Science, and then computer science, let's say. And then you graduated whenever you graduated, 2009, let's say. So we'll go on to the skills. This is another, you can add another degree here. We'll just go on to skills and click next. So this form identifies 4 top skills for computer programmers, and you can see them here. There's programming language proficiency, data visualization, usability, understanding, record keeping. So it's asking if you want to keep them. You can sure say add. It'll just populate them. If you don't like one, you can always remove them. And then look for something else that's interesting. Programming language specialist, this is more customized. VB script, I guess this is a programming language that'd be useful, and so on. So you get the idea. You can just select whatever is important and click on next summary. So let's see what we've, this is under background. So this is a little bit of a short description of yourself that catches the employer's attention. And we'll go with number 1, which is talented computer programmer, brings 10 years plus of experience delivering error-free code within stringent deadlines, comfortable with agile frameworks, and working collaboratively or autonomously. So this is a pretty awesome short description of yourself, and this will probably go at the top of your resume. So you can pick whichever one you think fits best and click extra sections, certifications, affiliations, accomplishments, hobbies. You can add whatever you think is important. I'm just going to click next, and here you go. Here's our resume. That took, I don't know, 2-3 minutes to do. And you have your professional summary, your skills, work history, and education as we populated it. This is a little bit different than the format I've discussed, but I guess, you know, it is a useful template that kind of delivers the information right away. So I personally like this, so it might work very well. You can just click download Adobe, and that's it. That's how simple it is to create the resume in 2020. Well, hopefully you guys found this very useful, and I'll catch you in the next video. Bye.